All right, let's talk about how to get your swing on plane. First of all, let's describe what plane is. So when we're coming into the golf ball in an ideal world, you see I have this pool noodle set up behind me here. You can see it's roughly the same angle as the golf club is at address. Our goal in the downswing is to have that club coming down pretty much parallel to that line as we're entering the delivery position. Okay, that's what's going to help us square the face up, have our club path kind of be going directly down our target line, and also help us have the low point in the right spot. So it's basically how you hit the ball straight. Now, what variable I want to talk about today is affecting the plane of the swing really simplifies things, okay? So we're going to talk about the difference in where your sternum is and where your belt buckle is. So let's keep it simple. My belt buckles and my buttons on my shirt and my belt buckles, okay? So if you're struggling with a steep downswing, if you're struggling with slicing, if you're struggling to shallow the club, so shallow would be more in this direction, steep would be more in this direction. So shallow would be when the club's really behind you, club head's way behind the hands. Steep would be when the club head is well outside the hands and coming down in a very vertical angle. So if you're coming down with a steep downswing that looks kind of like this, where the club is no longer on this line that's parallel to this pool noodle, and you're chopping down, you're coming across the golf ball, more than likely at some point in your swing, whether in your setup or in your backswing or early part of your downswing, your sternum is closer to the target than your pelvis. I use this exaggeration a lot with players. If I took my sternum and I went as far in front of my pelvis as I could, if I did that with a golf club, say I made a backswing, and my sternum went as far in front of me as humanly possible, look what happens to the path or the plane of the golf club. It's very steep, very far from the outside. Then we have to stand up and make all sorts of compensations. Now, vice versa, if you're a player, it's a better player's problem, but if the sternum is too far behind or further away from the target than the belt buckle, that drops the club under the plane too much, okay? So when we just look at where the sternum is relative to the pelvis, it can really dictate where the plane of your golf swing is going to go, okay? So if you're somebody that struggles with a steep downswing, I see it a lot where players will set up with their sternum already ahead of their pelvis. That usually they have the ball position too far forward and the sternum is way closer to the target than the pelvis, okay? I also see it in players when they sway their pelvis or extend their pelvis up this direction. That's basically just like getting hit by a tackle in your left knee and your upper body goes back this direction. So whenever you're swaying your hips too much, the sternum will work towards the target too much. So a lot of times it can be in setup, and a lot of times it can also happen early in the backswing. What can also happen from the top of the swing is if I'm rotating too much with my upper body, that kicks the hands out too far and steepens the club. Because whenever I'm rotating too much from the upper body, the sternum is going to want to be pulled forward, okay? So for a player of that problem, you need to feel like your sternum is further behind your pelvis in the backswing, and you want to maintain that relationship as you're coming down. And you can see as I'm doing that, that drastically changes where my arms and the club go, okay? Vice versa, the better player's problem that drops the club under the plane, you have the exact opposite problem. I'll see players like that turn the hips a lot, the chest moves away from the target too much, which pulls the arms really low and around them, and then at times also they'll have the pelvis drive too much to the target, and you can see what that does to the plane of the swing. It drops the club way underneath. So this player is going to struggle to take divots. It's going to struggle to hit down on the ball. Your path is going to be too much to the right. You're not going to have a ton of face control. You're going to drop kick your driver, hit the ground before the ball a lot, and have like this glancing blow, hit a lot of thin shots. Okay, so what's the right amount? Okay, we use the sports box technology here at Studio Golf where I give lessons. And what it measures is how much the differential between your pelvis and your sternum is as you're coming into the golf ball. So in a perfect world with a 7-iron, we want to be somewhere between 2 inches and 6 inches of differential with your sternum staying behind your pelvis. That's kind of the sweet spot of getting the club coming right down our plane line. Assuming our grip is good, assuming that our wrists are good and our arms are good, we're mainly just talking about the path of the club here. So all I'm focusing on is as I'm shifting weight into my left side, my sternum is staying slightly behind my pelvis, okay? So when we're working on this, the main thing is if you set up an alignment stick on an angle here, I have a pool noodle just to be safe, I want to go to the top of my swing, and if I'm a person that comes down steep or really rotates out this direction, or I have too much hip sway, it makes it very hard for me to get that club back down to this pool noodle. So for you, you need to feel a big lateral shift of the lower body to drop that club down onto the plane line. And once that happens, now we're in a better position to deliver into the strike. Vice versa, if you're a player that sucks the club way much to the inside because the sternum's moving behind the pelvis in the backswing, you're probably going to hit this pool noodle on the way back. And you're definitely going to want to hit it in the downswing. So this is a really great drill to kind of give you the feedback of what you're looking for. So set yourself up in a mirror, go to the top of your swing, and find that sweet spot. If the sternum's way in front of the pelvis and we're adding too much rotation, or if we're sliding too much with the lower body and dropping it underneath, you can kind of figure out where you are relative to the swing plane. It's really all relative to where your chest is relative to your sternum, okay? So once you kind of understand where you're trying to go, you can kind of see where you are at setup. If you're somebody that has the ball position way forward and you look at yourself in setup and you see your sternum is way ahead of your pelvis, or if you see yourself swaying a lot in your hip, and when you get to the top of your swing, the sternum or the buttons on my shirt are closer to the target than my belt buckle, it's going to be very hard to get the club back down to this pool noodle without making a bunch of compensations through early extension or throwing your wrist angles at it to try to get the club to the golf ball. Okay, now if you're somebody who sets up with too much tilt and has the problem of coming down too much from underneath the plane because the pelvis drives a little bit forward, it's the same thing that can solve that problem is what the over-the-top steep person does too much. An over-the-top steep person, if they already have their pelvis further away from the target than their chest, they're also going to add a little bit too much rotation. Rotation pulls the arms more out in front of you. So if you're a player that has the sternum further away from the target than the pelvis and we don't have enough rotation, the club bottoms out way back here. So that player needs to feel a little bit more rotation so the club doesn't get too shallow. Now the club's coming right down our plane line and you're feeling a little bit more like your sternum is further forward if that's your problem. If you're a person that is thinning the ball, blocking it out to the right, struggling to take a divot, your sternum is too far behind your pelvis. Now watch what happens if I add a little bit of hip and body rotation. Now my sternum is more in a good spot relative to my pelvis. And that's just by adding rotation. So I use this analogy all the time. If my sternum is way further forward than my pelvis in setup, in early backswing, or especially in the downswing, the club will always come down steep no matter what you do. Okay, that's super important to understand. If you're someone who comes too far from the inside, too low, whether you're setting up with the belt buckle or the buttons on your shirt further behind your belt buckle, or a lot of times it happens in transition with too much lateral slide to the pelvis and not enough rotation, that club is always going to come in too low to the floor, too far from behind you, stuck. So that player needs to feel a little bit more rotation to the body, which pulls the sternum a little bit closer to that belt buckle so there's not this huge 10-inch gap between my sternum and my belt buckle. So again, somewhere between 2 to 6 inches with a 7-iron is ideal. With a driver, it's a little bit more. It's like closer to 5 to 8 inches because we're hitting up on the ball and we're driving forward. The ball is further up in our stance. So we need our chest to be further back than our pelvis than we would with a 7-iron or a shot where the ball's on the ground. Okay, especially if you're someone who slices the ball or struggle to get the ball in the air, you're more than likely setting up in this direction with the sternum way far in front of the pelvis. It's probably getting worse in the backswing and then driving forward in the downswing. And that's why it makes it very hard for you to hit up on the ball, hit from the inside. So pay attention to where your sternum is relative to your pelvis in setup, in early backswing, and especially in transition and into impact. it can help get you on plane.